You just tell your story.
Sure. So the summer after my freshman year of high school, I was getting into a lot of lifting and a lot of basketball practice, shooting around on my own. I was really into sports, athletics. And after my freshman year of not really excelling as much as I had wanted to on the basketball court, I focused on that summer as my chance of making the varsity team, right? The senior team of my high school. I wanted to be the starting guard or, forward on that basketball team.
So you're 18?
I was 15.
Oh, 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanted to be playing with the 17 and 18-year-olds.
Okay.
I didn't want to play with people my age group. It was kind of an ego thing, right? I wanted to play against the best people in my district and my state. So my way of approaching that was I'm going to put my all into getting stronger, because when you're that young, 2-3 years of strength is a world's a difference, because you're going up against 6'5" people who are, 220, and I'm 120, 120, 130, 6 foot at the time, right? They would throw me around, but you also have to be able to score and defend. So I really prioritized my sports that summer. And then, I didn't believe in rest. I didn't believe in recovery. I just wanted to go as hard as possible in every single, opportunity I got at lifting, at basketball, whatever. And that eventually caught up to me. So, about 3 weeks of just intensity. And I was a cross country runner as well. So I was adding, 4 or 5 miles onto that, every day. So one of the mornings I woke up June 16th of 2015, and I had, tingling in my fingers, numbness in my, hands, weakness in my shoulders. I couldn't put my arms above my head. And I was like, okay, that's strange. Maybe I'll take today off, which was, I didn't do because I didn't believe in that. My perspective was if I was not working, someone was out there working, outworking me, which was not, a healthy attitude, but I also didn't have really anyone to look up to at that time on my team to tell me that's not a healthy attitude. We need to rest and recover. So I move through that day. I take the day off. I go to the pediatricians. The pediatrician says, this is strange, but you're not really showing any, nerve pinching. We'll get you an x-ray. We'll see if there's anything happening, and we'll prescribe ibuprofen, essentially a pain medicine. So I go to the x-ray, nothing's on the x-ray. The next morning I wake up, same symptoms. I can't put my arms above my head. There's pins and needles in my hands. And I'm frustrated because I was hoping sleep would just take away those symptoms. I move throughout that morning, move throughout that afternoon. I'm laying on the couch watching TV. And then I start to feel, internally anxiety and as if something is really wrong. So I stand up, I'm walking through the house, and I feel this really strong sense internally of just fear. And I call my mom home because I'm starting to lose function in my arms. And, I really can't move them at all. I call her home. She worked 15 minutes away. She gets home. By that time, I'm crying. I'm upset. I tell her, we need to call the therapy office, try to get me in for physical therapy. Maybe they can work something out with my arms. And she calls the therapy office. When she tells me that they're not going to be able to see me until the next morning, I go, really crazy, upset. My mom tells me to sit down on the couch. She's going to massage my shoulders. She's going to put BioFreeze to try to, cool me off. And I'm still crying, still shaking. And then, after 10 minutes of that, she's like, all right, let's try to stand up and walk this off. And when she told me to stand up, I could no longer stand. So I'm sitting on the couch, really not able to move my arms, cannot stand. My mom starts crying, of course, because it's very upsetting for her, not knowing what's happening. She calls my dad home. My dad works 20 minutes away as well. He gets home. By the time he gets home, I'm still in a similar state, a little bit worse. They carry me to the car. So, I got mom and dad on both sides. They're carrying me. They sit me in the front seat and we drive to the local hospital. When we get to the local hospital, they're not really used to this type of, severity. I'm from a smallish town and on the Iowa-Illinois border on the Mississippi. They're not really used to these cases. So the team that comes out to get me is kind of like lackadaisical. They're like, like maybe this kid broke a bone. And then my mom's like, you need to come out now. And she like storms past them, gets me a wheelchair, puts me in the wheelchair. The team's just like standing back, because, my mom she just takes over those situations. And luckily, they got me a room. They put me in a bed. And luckily there was a physician there who had been from a larger regional hospital. And he had seen these cases before. So he knew what needed to be done instantly. And essentially what needed to be done was I needed to be lying flat. I needed a catheter put into my bladder because eventually I would lose all, ability to control my bladders and my bowels, because paralysis is more than just sensation and, your physical strength. It also affects internal organs. So they put a catheter in my bladder. And as a 15-year-old being completely naked on a bed and having 3-4 people around you, putting IVs in your arms, catheters in your bladder, it was,
That sucks.
It was really, it was intense.
Yeah.
I wasn't really sure what was happening. And at that point, I didn't know what was going to be the severity of this. Was I going to live? Was I reaching like a blow off top here, and I would just, eventually settle into a neutral state. I wasn't sure what the end game was at that point. So it was more of like anxiety of like, okay, this is weird, but like, where are we headed?
But at that point, you're not diagnosed with anything.
No. So they're just trying to make sure all of my vitals are stable. They're trying to make sure that I'm able to, urinate, essentially just make sure I'm in a stable place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what?
So, after a half hour, 45 minutes there of them helping me get stable, they're like, okay, we're at a local hospital. You can be better treated at a larger regional hospital that has more resources, teams that are trained to, treat this condition. They didn't know what the condition was, but they knew it was some type of neurological condition. They're like, we don't have the capacity here to treat that. So we're going to put you in an ambulance, and then we're going to, push you over to the regional hospital 3 hours away. So I get in the ambulance with my mom. I'm on a stretcher at that point, just arms at my side. At that point, like I have no movement below my shoulders. So all I can do is like sort of look over to my mom with my eyes, but I can't move my arms or my legs. I cannot feel the stretcher underneath my body. It feels like I'm floating in space. It's almost as if you have this cable and it gets cut, and anything above the cable, which would be my head and my neck, everything is fine. Everything below is fair game for the most part. You don't have really anything. So I lie there for 3 hours, and as soon as I get to the regional hospital, they say, we're going to do an MRI so we can have imaging of your brain and your spinal cord. So they want to rule out, maybe there was trauma, maybe all the athletics I was doing, maybe there was some internal trauma or damage that's pressing on my brain or pressing on my spinal cord that they'll need to do surgery on, right? They were trying to rule out, do we need to do surgical operations right now? Or is this just an internal, maybe a stroke, maybe a autoimmune condition that we can treat with drugs, pharmaceuticals? They were trying to rule out surgery first. So I get in the MRI machine, and it was a 3 or 4 hour MRI, because you have to get all of your brain imaged, and then each segment of your spinal cord, there's 4 segments. So they do each scanning of the cord with and without contrast. And contrast is a way that they can see, different agents within the body that, may or may not help them make a diagnosis, right? So I'm in there, and growing up, my mom's Catholic. I was a Christmas Catholic, right? So I went to church on Christmas. I did go to a Catholic school, K through 12. So I did have religion class, and we did go to church sometimes with school. But that was the first time where I was unsure if I was going to pull through, because I wasn't, no one had told me what was happening, because no one knew what was happening. So I wasn't sure if, at any point my vitals could go crazy. I would no longer be able to breathe, because they were very concerned that if the paralysis kept moving upward, as the paralysis moves upward toward the brain, the closer it gets to the brain, there's an area called the brain stem. The brain stem is responsible for your breathing. So if the paralysis kept moving upward toward the brain stem and affected the brain stem, I would no longer be able to breathe. So they wanted to make sure that was not happening, and they were watching me really closely. So while I'm in the MRI machine, I had memorized the rosary growing up, right? I knew all the prayers, and I just kept saying the prayers because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I was like, if I die, at least I, atone for my sins or whatever, right? I was really grasping at anything at that point. So we make it out of the MRI, and it's like 2 or 3 in the morning at that point. And the doctor's like, just go to bed, right? We'll look at the scans while you're asleep, and we will let you know what we think in the morning. And I was wearing contacts at the time. I had no way, obviously, of taking out my contacts. So my cousin and my mom were like helping me take out my contacts. And it was this kind of whole like very, I guess, just dramatic scene, because they're trying to care for me. I can't care for myself. And as a young man, you want to be independent. You want to care for yourself. And now you have your mom, right there. So it's a really big change at that point.